Have to stop you at 15 minutes.
You're good to go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this very, very important event co-organized by the Global Policy Institute and Bay Atlantic University in Washington, D.C. My name is Paolo from Schirach. I am the president of the Global Policy Institute and chair of political science and international relations at Bay Atlantic University. It is my really distinct pleasure to welcome this exceptional panel of experts on a very new, well, relatively new, I guess, aspect of the whole continuum of agriculture in Africa and, of course, globally. You know, agriculture is a basic stuff. It's food. It's survival for most of us, whether we are in the United States or in the African continent, in Asia or elsewhere. And so today we will get insights on how digital technologies and other IT sophisticated tools can enable new ways of looking at agriculture, planning, you know, execution, whatever. But I'll leave it to the experts to discuss it. We are, as I said, this is the latest, but certainly not the last event that we are co-hosting at GPI and BAU on African agriculture. And this is, and we're especially thankful to the organizer, to Adam Saffer, our board member, who has really lent his own significant knowledge and expertise and networks in Africa and beyond to prepare and give us really the opportunity here in Washington, D.C. to listen and to learn from experts from the continent. And today we're looking forward to this latest installment. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who will be moderating the event, introduce the speakers, and run this session. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Paolo. It's a pleasure to be back, and welcome to all of you who are listening via Zoom or Facebook. Welcome to the fourth webinar in a series focused on sustainable agriculture in Africa. Today's 1-hour program comprises presentations from 3 highly qualified agricultural practitioners who are creating and deploying digital technologies as a key ingredient in their business strategies. And personally, after living in Africa for most of the last 30 years, I can assure you that agricultural development, both for food security as well as poverty relief, has the greatest potential really to improve rural livelihoods, foster stability, and productively engage women and youth. Before hearing from the speakers, I'd like to take a minute to define what we mean by agricultural digitization. It's a mouthful. So simply, it is the use of digital technologies to integrate agricultural production across the entire value chain, from the farm to the paddock to the consumer. Digitization has already proven that it can efficiently and effectively unlock the potential of smallholder farmers and more generally the agribusiness sector. These technologies provide agribusinesses with tools, data, and information to make more informed decisions. Innovations in digital agriculture help farmers increase their yields and incomes by sourcing inputs such as seeds, fertilizers, and other crop protection products. And through various types of platforms, it can also help identify off-takers, sources of finance, new markets, and technical assistance. For example, contactless payments through fintech, remote sensing through drones, freely available and really decent quality satellite imagery for monitoring fields, digital marketplaces where producers and off-takers can meet and trade, and data analytics to better manage the business as well as prepare for changing market and climatic conditions. So I hope that adequately sets the stage of what we're talking about today. So now let's listen to the folks who live and breathe these issues every day. The format of today's webinar will be to hear from our 3 speakers, followed by a Q&A session. So please feel free to type your questions, as some of you have already done, in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. So today we're going to start with Kiprop Chirchir. the founder and CEO of Mamlaka Foods in Kenya. Kip is a blockchain crusader who is currently building Africa's largest blockchain platform to broaden the transactional use for smallholder farmers. Welcome, Kip.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. I'd like to start going from the broad to the specific by asking you to give us your view on the overall state of digitization in agriculture in Africa, not specifically where you work, but overall continental wide. What are the key changes or interventions required to facilitate this transformation?
So over the last decade, we have witnessed a deepening in the mobile penetration, which has been a key enabler of all the other infrastructural support. We have watched the growth of mobile payments, like in Kenya, you have M-Pesa that started from Kenya, and many other mobile networks have it. We are witnessing a lot of digital literacy because of the penetration of the smartphones. And these are tools that have been able to enable a lot of digitization process in agriculture. However, on the flip side, we are also witnessing a lot of disjointed, expensive, and at times hard to use solutions, which make it very difficult for the farmer. The farmer being the last mile in this process is the one that if we manage to digitize a lot of things around the farmer, then we would be ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you. I know it's a tough question. It's a big question. So let's get that a little more specifically to Mamlaka. What aspects of digitization are you focusing on?
So at Mamlaka, we are in a mission to build a marketplace that connects farmers to buyers and integrate using blockchain and artificial intelligence. We have built a solution that creates a transparent, removing many players in the field. One of the biggest challenges you find in many African countries is the number of intermediaries who are involved in all this. For example, most average value chains in Kenya deal with a minimum of 7 to 14 intermediaries. And many of them don't add value, but they just double up and replicate costs. So in order to do that, we've tried for the last 2 years to build different solutions. And when we finally integrated blockchain into this, we were able to build all-in-one ledger that enables everybody to borrow and pick information from there. This solution, which links farmers, also has enabled us to ride on what we call smart warehouses. We have small collection centers which are closer to the farmers, and we have used those ones as collection centers. At the market level, we are building micro fulfillment centers or dark warehouses, which enables us to serve the customer faster and also enables us to collaborate with other e-commerce platforms to fulfill their orders.
Very good. Yeah, the number of agents and middle people along that value chain, separates the actual buyer from the producer and takes advantage oftentimes of the chain before that person, typically the farmer. It's odd how at each end of the value chain, the farmer and the consumer, I think you were telling me this, Kip, one day, they're the ones that get taken advantage of the most.
It's interesting you say that, because the two most important people in this value chain is the producer and the consumer. And the producer earns very little and the consumer pays very expensive. And all the men and women in the middle make all the money, and to the detriment of the two important players.
Exactly. So with your blockchain and warehouse and systems, looking beyond Mamlaka, how do you think these solutions will affect the sector in the industry? In other words, how can your innovations and advancements be scaled? Or do you expect them to be scaled? Do you expect them to be picked up, or are you thinking broader than Kenya? What's the replication factor here?
One of the things that you realize is many African countries, depending on where they were colonized from, they have almost the same structures, whether agricultural infrastructure, whether mobile network operators. So one of the Mamlaka is built as a collaborative platform, because one of the biggest challenges we have in the market is we have many people building the same solutions and nobody is learning from the other. We're very excited about our blockchain solution as it gives many partners like financial institutions. We are going to have input distributors. We will have quality checks, traceability, and we'd be able to plug. If we went to Uganda, we went to another country, we'd be able to plug into the existing organizations as opposed to going to start from the ground. Mm-hmm. And so we see this, if we build the platform and build the micro warehouses to shorten the time of from the farmer to the customer, it then enables many other people to collaborate and build into that. And so that is what we will pass.
Well, I hope that happens. I think, you know, I agree with you. I'm involved with a number of countries across the continent in agriculture, and a number of people watching this video right now are doing similar things. And I just hope that everybody has the gumption to reach out to each other and talk. There's plenty of room for many actors. This is not a zero-sum game by any means. But let me drill down just a second, Kip, in what you were saying. Who specifically, I mean, I'm not looking at pointing my finger to blame anyone, but who specifically are the key drivers, the enablers, the accelerators in Africa? Because these are the groups we need to support. You know, we're trying to transform into a more efficient and effective and digitized agricultural sector, but really who, other than the thousands of entrepreneurs like yourself who are building things, who else are the key drivers? Is it government? Is it the buyers? Is it the aggregators? Who are the key people who are going to end up making this happen, do you think?
So the biggest transformational organization, if we pick Kenya, has been Safaricom, the mobile network operator. Mm-hmm. Because through the mobile network operator, we've had financial services, we've had M-Pesa, which has really been a key driver in building the digital economy, because you are able to transfer money at the same level you're transferring transactions. Governments, we are fortunate in Kenya to have, by and large, a government that has understood the speed of transformation, and we put in fiber coverage in Kenya. Digital literacy is improving. And then we have other organizations like financial institutions who must build while we are innovating and building solutions, the financial institutions. And finally, legacy infrastructure institutions. We have Kenya Farmers Association, which is over 100 years, with a lot of warehouses in this country, most of them doing so badly. We have National Cereals Board. And if you go to Tanzania, you have a replica of what's happening in Kenya, and so in many countries. I read this about Ghana again, about the cooperative societies. Now, if you were to bring those and the cooperative societies that were built way back in the 60s, but collapsed somewhere in the middle, this would be huge drivers, and Africa can pick a big leap upwards.
You've identified, you know, a number of people. I agree with you fully. I think some of these associations, Tanzania Tea Association with 18,000 members, or the Nigerian RIFON, the Rice Association of Nigeria, supposedly, you know, millions of members. They could be a lot stronger. They could work a lot better. And I think the building block of all of this is communication, and integrity, which builds trust. But I'll ask the other speakers as well these questions, because I think it's really important to identify, you know, not only the problems. We're not here just to talk about the problems. We're here to talk about the solutions and how to move the ball downfield. So like in summary, Kip, what should and can be done over the next 12 months? I'm in a lot of meetings where we talk about the future, and it's very easy to talk about in 5 years what we're going to do because there's no accountability really. But in the next 12 months, if we were going to start doing something, the government, the telecom folks, the large off-takers, the SME, smallholder farmers, what do you think needs to be done rather urgently and can be done over the next 12 months?
While I am first a crusader for blockchain solutions because of the collaborative nature it offers, I believe we need to build and institute collaboration across many sectors. You will find Robert is building a solution that doesn't compete with me. Governments should encourage collaboration, stop licensing every other day a similar organization, and try and get the players who are there to collaborate and share the data. If you pick Kenya, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture a few years ago started digitizing farmers, creating a list of farmer registry. Safaricom is doing the same thing. We are doing the same thing. Every single person is doing the same thing. When will we create one source of data that enables all of us to stop going to register farmers and then move towards providing solution instead of when Adam comes to Kenya, the first thing you must go and create a database. There should be a common database. And that is why I am a believer that blockchain solution will create a faster, safer, collaborative framework. But building capacity within government, institutions like Bay Atlantic University, to try and build capacity so that some governments do not know they're cropping in the dark. And it's important to build capacity within government and collaboration with academia. There is a lot of papers written and kept even right behind you. I can maybe find one or two that nobody has ever used. And if we all used and collaborated around that, we would all be able to build a much bigger, faster economy. Of course, the other solutions like cheapening of creation of cheaper smartphones, because then we stop. USSD is a very expensive solution. So by using smartphones, we'll be able to create a much cheaper solutions, and we make data light applications that make it cheaper for the poor economy.
Excellent ideas. Excellent ideas. I think they all are doable. You really hit the nail on the head when you said, when I go to someplace, I need to create a new database, because almost every project I've been on in Africa has had a component. In fact, I'm talking to a group right now about the very same thing in Nigeria, where I just returned from, to build yet another database of smallholder farmers. And this is a great segue. Kip, thank you. Your commitment, your innovation to global food security as well as poverty relief is admirable, and keep going. I want to follow this up, and the blockchain, which is fairly new to me, is something that I'm very, very interested in. So let's go to our software guru, Robert Okine. Robert is the founder and CEO of Better World Systems, commonly known as BUSYS. Robert and his firm are based in Ghana. They focus on developing unique digital solutions and services related to the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's an incredibly broad area. They've worked in 63 developing countries. And just let me plug this, Robert, please don't be offended. But earlier this year, the United Nations Global Compact named Robert as the 2021 SDG Pioneer for Digital Innovation and Inclusion. And just a week or two ago, he was selected as the Ghana ICT Industry CEO of the Year. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your kind words, and greetings to everyone listening to us.
All right, I see. I'd like to start, as a software-based organization focusing on the SDGs, I'd like to start with a fairly simple question. What types of software applications do you feel have the best chance of helping governments, producers, off-takers, and others improve their efficiency and effectiveness? We all know change is difficult for many, especially when they've been doing the same thing for generations and learn from their parents and their grandparents. What platforms have the best chance of succeeding? You're on mute, Bobby. Robert? We may be having some technical difficulty. Can anyone hear me? Maybe
Yes,
I'm
we
the-
can hear you, Mr. Saffer, but I think they're having technical difficulties. I also can't see Roland.
Right, Roland went offline. I will reach out to him.
Yeah. Adam,
I
are
think
we
he's
here?
online. He's online, but I think his Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Okay, Bobby, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Did you hear the question?
No, I lost you on the question.
The question was, as a software-based organization, what types of software applications do you think are going to have the most chance of success, you know, in helping governments, producers, off-takers, et cetera, transition into a more efficient and effective sector?
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. Yes, I'll say digital tools can aid in every part of the agricultural value chain, and I'll take each value process that faces in it. So for planning, a farm management software helps farmers plan what, when, and how to plant and make business decisions. For inputs, a supplier information management software helps farmers identify, connect, and trade with suppliers of quality input. For on-site production, a farm management software helps farmers plan, monitor, and analyze all activities on the farm easily. In some cases, you have learning and information sharing software that enables extension service to reach farmers via mobile telephony to enhance agriculture. For storage, and Kiprop talk about the warehousing, monitoring and evaluation software helps monitor storage conditions to ensure best practices for harvest. For post-harvest processing, a quality management software to support supply chain regulation, such as product grading among regulators, producers, suppliers, and consumers are valuable. For transportation, which is a significant challenge in agriculture in Africa, logistics software provides farmers with information on transportation booking to ensure the timely delivery of their produce to off-takers. Finally, for access to market, an e-commerce software that provides farmers with information on market prices and a platform to sell their produce are also valuable. It is also important to mention that there are software that provides some of these systems as integrated solution or standalone solution within the value chain. However, this solution could be prioritized and even designed and deployed differently, depending on several prevailing factors. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you've addressed where I was leading. You've addressed all of the points you make are really, I appreciate you focused them on SDG 2.0 hunger. And I understand that there are many applications that could be applied to throughout the value chain. So my question is, in the countries you've worked in, is the government infrastructure, digital infrastructure there, are the off-takers, be they multinationals or local or aggregators, are they prepared, even if you gave them a solution, do they have the platform, do they have the knowledge, and do they have the interest and commitment to actually change and learn how to use this system? Is that sort of swimming upstream? Or is that, you have the package, but you can't plug it in anywhere because they're not yet at a level where they can rise to use it efficiently?
Yeah, so Adam, I think the main obstacle preventing digitalization of Africa's agricultural sector include one, funding, government commitment, partnership, and user-centered design. And I think the point you are making falls around user-centered design. I think African government must invest in the research and development of evidence-based national digital agricultural strategies coupled with public investment plans. From our experience working with 4 out of the 8 regional economic communities in Africa, we realize that government-funded digitalization for agricultural projects often do not fit into any broader developmental strategy. This ends up stalling the ability of beneficiaries to experience any significant long-term benefit of the digital system. This is because the sustainability of digital solution is always dependent on network effects and how well these systems build a network and create value for all stakeholders as they leverage on the system. So government can be more intentional than reactive in developing self-sustaining digital solution with a national digitalization strategy. I think, thankfully, we are assisting some governments in the Middle East through technical assistance to ensure a holistic strategy for digitalization for agriculture. We have observed projects that can be done with more advanced technology to create greater value, being restricted to a narrow project scope due to lack of financing. In some cases, where we have the opportunity to dive deeper into why there is limited financing, we discovered that potential funding partners have no incentive. Therefore, stakeholders should build stronger partnerships from the initial stages where problems are being defined and solutions are being conceptualized to ensure that we create compelling business cases to attract investors. We also see scenarios where solutions are developed and deployed, but do not live up to the expected outcomes because of a foreign solution was replicated or procured without consideration of the prevailing user challenges or characteristics that could influence the adoption of digital systems. Yeah, thank you, Adam.
You're welcome. Thank you, Robert. You know, in all of my years in development, the biggest common denominator for me is behavioral change. In all my assignments, whether I'm in the field or I'm in a head office, I look at it as behavioral change, because you've got to get people to think differently in agriculture, more commercially, longer term, digitally, et cetera, et cetera. So from Busis, you know, you've got a lot of projects under your belt. Could you share just one that is relevant to this discussion that you know, whether it worked or it didn't, that's up to you to comment on. I get a lot of these take years to really determine whether they're going to have the impact you expect. But one good example of a SDG 2 zero hunger application that you've used.
Okay, yeah. So I'll
briefly though.
Okay, so let me give an example. We have undertaken we took a project for an organization that had the objective to use audits to inform the development of evidence-based programs with impact investors to ensure responsible production and sourcing of agricultural commodities and forest products. However, its field auditors relied on manual and paper-based checklists, documentation, reporting processes, which made the process cumbersome and resulted in inefficient data collection information loss in some scenarios. So what did we do at Busis? We were contracted to design and develop a user-centered, and the keyword again, user-centered field auditing mobile application to enable the field auditors to easily access checklists, collect, analyze, and share data to address this challenge. Considering that the field auditors carried out audits in remote areas, the mobile application had offline and online functionalities to prevent information loss due to unavailability of data access in remote areas, like what happened to this section when my internet went off. We ensure that the solution can work in remote areas. So today, we've been able to have an impact on that. The organization has leveraged that to get data and just to build business cases, to mobilize funds from impact investors, one, enhance sustainable production value chain in West Africa and Southeast Asia. So if you look at this scenario, you see a challenge like information flow can either enable or hinder the development of program and financing, which are significant challenges that limit the effectiveness and efficiency of agricultural value chain in Africa. Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Robert. I'm trying to watch the time here. I think I will move on and come back to you a little later, but thank you, Robert. You are certainly developing some very unique solutions. You're the only company I've met that focuses completely on the SDGs and is versatile enough to work on social safety nets and social protection and work from South Sudan to the South Pacific. So we look forward to Busis setting the precedent in many, many ways. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to Roland. Now, I can barely see you, Roland. I don't know if you can turn on a light. It's very, very dark, so I can't really see you at all.
Yes, Adam, we just had a power outage, and that's why my internet was out for a bit. I'm actually sitting outside right now. You might hear some background noise, but I'll do my best to be loud enough. I'm sorry, I have no other means to have any light around me. So if I turn on the generator, then we might not even hear each other. So let's just hope my voice can be good enough to light up the entire webinar at the moment.
Okay, well, you are coming across clear. To everybody, Roland is the CEO of Greenhouse Ventures in Cameroon. They focus on developing and deploying climate-smart greenhouses across the country, but he's working on mobile apps to support, to aid diaspora in funding and maybe not transferring just money, but transferring money to have a greenhouse put into the family plot. He's working on a trading platform. He's also an educator, believes in knowledge sharing in a big way. He's president of Funik University. It's a very interesting story. So welcome, Roland.
Thank you, Adam, for having me.
You're welcome. Let me start by asking you a general question, if you don't mind. In your perspective, why is agricultural digitization in Africa still unattainable? Yet I know Paolo mentioned it's relatively new, but there's been years and years of investments made in this sector for databases, for platforms, for training, M-Pesa and various fintech. Why is it still sort of crawling along at this late stage?
Yes, agriculture in Africa is still not regarded as a business, like we were talking here earlier. And that is why some of these hardcore real solutions are not yet being implemented. And even if there are institutions that are trying to implement them, they are not taken seriously. You know, agriculture in Cameroon, I will speak more specifically, is still being carried out by the older population. This older population is very distant away from digitization, and it makes it even very hard for them to be able to adopt these new technologies that can actually be used in agriculture today. The second aspect is that, you know, any investments that are kind of going into agriculture, they are not sustainable or real investments. They are more or less charitable investments. I mean, if you look around today, any investments that are going into agriculture usually would be going for cash crops, but not vegetable or food crops, something that 90% of the population is based on or farming on. So it makes in such a way that the real solutions go to the population that is not so savvy, and those who actually need it the most don't really get it, which is why, you know, despite the numerous investments that keep going into that sector, very little is being done. Africa today has a very large and fast growing youth population, but unfortunately this youth population is not involved in agriculture at all, and that makes it a very, very big problem. I believe that the key in digitizing agriculture in Africa has to start with how do we attract and retain the youths in agriculture. And to get that done, it's one of the solutions that we are looking to bring into the game at the moment.
No, I agree with you. Women and youth, I mean, they've got to get interested in agriculture, and they certainly don't want to live the life their parents are living.
Exactly.
So, you know, how do you make it easier, accessible, a little bit more sexy in terms of a career move? Tell us more, Roland. Tell us more about the greenhouses that you're designing, you're building, you're deploying. You know, how can they in greenhouse farming be used as a model to emulate across Africa? You know, I know we talked before a little bit about vertical farming and the incredible demands on power in other aspects to make it, you know, a little bit challenging for Africa, but greenhouses, you know, seem to be a great idea. How can greenhouse farming be instrumental in catalyzing the digitization of agriculture in Africa?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. What we've been able to do here in Cameroon is some 8 years ago, we started by introducing this climate smart, low cost greenhouses in the country. To give you a little history about that, Cameroon has never had a greenhouse. up until about 2006. And the first greenhouse costed about $500,000, which, exactly didn't really make any sense. So we came in with a model of sustainable and affordable greenhouses, which became very, very attractive to many. Secondly, we've been able to design greenhouses that are adaptable to every ecological zone in Cameroon. Cameroon, it's one of those countries in Africa that, like they say, it's African miniature, but has 7 ecological zones. So being able to design a greenhouse that is adapted to a particular zone, adapted for the cultivation of particular crops, is one of the things that we've been able to do. The third aspect is also being able to standardize the cultivation of a wide variety of crops, which we've been able to do to this moment. Using greenhouses to be able to move into digitization is our next best goal, because we now see a way where we've been able to attract and retain youths and women in the domain of agriculture. And one of the things that we've been able to do is being able to bridge the gap between the farms and the markets. Because usually in Cameroon, for example, to be more specific, the farmer is not the marketer and the marketer is not the farmer. So agriculture is actually left at the mercy of this middleman. And there are too many of them in there. They tend to determine the price. They tend to determine how the market works. They tend to determine whatever is to be produced. But what we've been able to do is not only design greenhouses, but also we are instituting kind of a market platform wherein anybody with a greenhouse actually has access to a market, and at prices that makes the investment in the greenhouses actually very sustainable, and a return on investment which is very, very encouraging. Today, we've been able to build over 400 greenhouses all around the country, and we engage in several participants or members throughout, from universities to community groups, to governments, to developmental organizations like the United Nations, and many more. And we believe that the solutions that we are bringing in today will go a long way to be emulated, not only in Cameroon, but we believe that is something that would go in many other parts of Africa.
I agree. I love the idea. I really do. I think it's affordable. I think it can be scaled. It can be scaled down to the smallholder farmer, let's say, in the family or a small community, but probably more, you're looking at more commercial approaches, which I further support. We talked about this a little earlier, Roland, before this conference, but I'd like you to explain to the audience, you mentioned to me that a major part of the greenhouse deployment in terms of digitalization is data analytics. And I'd like you to explain a bit more about what types of data are being collected, how's it being used, what is the delta between, pre-digitalization and post, how does the data analytics work and how is it applied?
Yes, our key to success today is data collection and how we analyze that data to be able to use in our cultivation methods. One of the things we do before we even get to set up a greenhouse, we start by doing a whole feasibility study. In that study, we take in data from humidity, temperature, we take in altitude, we take in soil data, and we take in rainfall in that particular environment, wind speed, sun direction, and all of that. All of this information helps us to be able to better design a greenhouse, but also helps us to as to what we are looking to cultivate. With that information, we are able to target markets that are closer and nearer to that particular greenhouse. And because of this data that we are collecting, it has given us an insight as to what we can improve on. And during an entire cultivation cycle, we collect a lot of data in terms of how many, the sizes of the fruits, how many fruits we can get per plant, and why. And we use that data to be able to analyze things such as why didn't we do well in this particular area versus the other area. And all of this information better just helps us to be able to improve on the processes in different areas. Today in Cameroon, we've been able to set up greenhouses in 6 regions out of 10 regions. And we have been, I would tell you a little story. Sometime in 2015, one of our ministers of agriculture challenged me to the fact that greenhouses could not work in the economic capital, which is in Douala. And I gave him a bet, and he said, hey, Roland, the day you get greenhouses working in Douala, I would make greenhouses, a nationwide policy throughout the country. And that is something that we've been able to do, because today in Douala, we have more greenhouses than any other part of Cameroon, which of course, Douala used to be a place where people believe that, it is non-agricultural, nothing can be produced in these areas. But today we are proving that with the data we have been able to collect, with the designs that we've been able to put to play, we're able to produce a lot more than anyone ever expected. And actually we're converting barren land into very highly productive land. Such a phenomenon has attracted a lot of youths, a lot of individuals into the domain of agriculture, and making people now see agriculture as a business and not just something as a means to an end. Because usually and previously, people have always looked at agriculture as the last thing they do when every other thing has failed. But we are reversing that trend and making people see agriculture as the first and the best thing you can do before every other thing starts failing. And it is becoming very interesting. Like you mentioned, we are making agriculture very, very sexy, very, very fancy, and very, very attractive. And all of this has to do with a lot of the data that we are collecting and how we analyze it and put it into use.
Well, I think great. I think it makes sense. I think, to me, again, behavioral change, the people you're working with, which obviously are adopting this change, have to be ready and willing to look at the data, learn how to analyze it, make decisions by it, and more importantly, change the way they've been making decisions in the past. And this is the thing. And now, yeah, it seems like people are adopting this. You're rolling out a number. I don't know how many greenhouses you have, but it sounds like they're increasing rapidly. I believe you had mentioned in a previous discussion with that you're thinking about, or you have implemented, a franchise model. Franchising is an interesting business model for a lot of people across the developing world, some better than others. And I would like, if you don't mind, if it's too early, let me know,
Sure.
but could you elaborate a little bit about your franchising model, where it is today and where you expect it to go?
Yes, when we started greenhouses, of course, it is an activity that requires some investment. And in the beginning, I mean, everybody was very skeptical. One of it, they asked the question, why greenhouses in Cameroon? I mean, greenhouses are only meant for, the Western world, or, countries that have 4 different climates. Why do we need greenhouses in Cameroon? Cameroon has very good soils, good climates. Why greenhouses? And over, we tried making people understand that the use of greenhouses is not only about the climate aspect, but also about the sustainability aspect. The fact that you can use very small lots of land for very huge production is very, very important. The fact that you can actually get the youths, the women, the young and very old into agriculture is very, very important. The fact that you can use greenhouses to grow crops that are normally being imported in Cameroon is it's another very valuable aspect. The fact that you can use greenhouses to grow in very natural environments, it adds on to the value of all of what we are looking to do. So yes, one of the ways that we use to be able to make greenhouses something of nationwide was introducing this franchise model. With the franchise model, what did we do? For example, you, Adam, you would bring in land, and we would set up the greenhouses. We would manage together, and then we will go on to split the profits. And that actually attracted a lot of people, and that also enabled us to be able to set up greenhouses in areas where they never existed, or in areas where we never had access to. And today we have even people in the diaspora who are based in the United States, for example, and they can own a greenhouse in Cameroon. We have a greenhouse academy where we train individuals in greenhouse and green and sustainable agriculture. So they go on to manage, farms of our franchisees and partners. And the collective aspect is that we have a supermarket today wherein everything that we harvest from all our greenhouses are being sold at. So basically, the franchise model has enabled us to be able to increase our footprints around the entire country. Today, we've built over 400 greenhouses in 6 different regions all over the country. We are attaining a production capacity of about 800 kilograms of produce every week, something that as of last year, we only had about 200 kilograms. And as of next year, we should be getting to about We should be getting to about a million by mid of next year. And we believe that at some point we should be able to have a huge impact in terms of local production. Today, we've been able to reverse the trend of a lot of the produce that were normally being imported, things like colored bell peppers, things like spinach, things like strawberries, things like broccoli, and all of these items, food items that normally were imported, we are now growing them. And we've also been able to reduce the price on these items because they're now grown locally, making people now believe that, well, good food is not only to be consumed by the rich and wealthy, but each and everyone has a right to good food. I believe that good quality food is more of a human right than that which is just belongs to those who belong to the wealthy and the rich class. And because of this franchise model that we have been able to introduce, we've had so many people interested in greenhouses today, from farming groups who come together and contribute funds to be able to invest in a greenhouse, because the guarantee is that we are working with you to manage the greenhouses, and we also ensure that everything that has been harvested would be sold. And not only that it is being sold, but everything that will be harvested is of good and very high quality. Today, I have been able to I work with a lot of experts from countries like Ghana, from countries like Kenya, who are here, and they train our own local Cameroonians, because yes, Cameroon had, prior to us, Cameroon had no school of greenhouses. But today we have been able to train over 200 youths in the domain, and they're going on either to own their own farms or work with us or work with our partners. But thanks to the franchise model, I believe that it has been very instrumental in replicating and multiplying our footprints throughout the entire country. And it's something that we want to be able to share with many others around the continent, so that greenhouses become a way for agriculture throughout the entire continent and not only Cameroon.
Oh, I think it's terrific. I really think what strikes me a little bit, Roland, about the greenhouse model is, this is not a case of out with the old and in with the new. We're not purging the entire system and replacing it. So I think, technologies like artificial intelligence, or remote sensing, robotics, data analytics, these are making the future very exciting. But I think the fastest adoption rate will be to those companies that can blend the old with the new and not make it completely new. I think that Kip is doing that. I think that Robert is doing that. You have to bring people along. As Paolo started, you don't have to start with what's a good example? You don't have to start with a PC that's a 24 gig or 24, 48 or 126 or 128, 520. You can jump right into gigabytes and terabytes and things like that. You don't have to take as long, but you can't just throw out what you've done. You have to tie it to the foundation that's been there. And I think that makes the transition easier. Anyway, thank you, Roland. We're running out of time. I wanted to speak with you more, all of you more, but I think we're getting toward the Q&A session. I've had a lot of Q&A coming in the window here. And so I would like to move along and pick a couple of questions. I'd like to open the floor, and because of the time frame, I may assign questions to certain people, and then we'll go for everybody. The first question is which digitalization systems are needed or tools will be required to support, monitor, and enforce policies within the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the CFTA. This agreement, among other things, guarantees free movement of goods and services produced on the continent. It's a very significant agreement. I'd like to ask Robert to give us his view on the software and the other implications of this agreement. Do you think Africa will be able to take full advantage of this agreement?
Okay, Adam, thank you very much. This is a great question. And I think in the case of AFC, FTA, creating policies that encourage and enable the development of mutually beneficial partnership for trade is critical. From our experience, we realize countries have policies. What is lacking is harmonization of those policies at the continental level. And if that is done, it will help with integration of the various systems that these countries have. In terms of maturity, some of the countries have systems that help them to do something. Others do not have. And there need to be a kind of harmonization that will help bring all of them at the same level, if possible, so that they will be able to trade digitally. One other thing that is critically needed will be a digital marketplace to be able to sell. Currency payments is also a big issue. We always say it's quite cheaper importing items from China as compared to doing business with a farmer in Ghana and a off-taker in Kenya. These are some of the challenges that we have on the continent. So at the continental level, if we are able to have policies that bridge this gap that we have, we'll be able to build on technologies that will seamlessly help us do business seamlessly.
I hope so. I hope so, Robert, because like a lot of things in the U.S. and across Africa and other places, the big players dominate, and the little players are never heard from again. You look at your average chamber of commerce or business associations, the 3 or 4 or 5 big firms. I'm hoping it won't be the 3 or 4 or 5 big countries that get the benefit. And in that line is that's another question. Similar, when you look at digitization, the large companies are certainly taking advantage of the latest technologies. But what about the smallholder farmer? Most digital solutions are not reaching the poor, rural, small-scale farmers and their value chain actors at that level, especially women who are the most disadvantaged. So digital solutions in the agricultural sector, the solutions are outpacing the readiness to adopt those solutions across most of the smallholder farmer community where most of the produce comes from. It's African agriculture is predominantly smallholder driven. And so how can the average smallholder farmer or SME service provider along the value chain get access to such tools and techniques? I'd like to direct that question to Kip. Welcome back.
One of the biggest lessons we learned is the adoption of M-Pesa in Africa, especially in Kenya. The understanding of the customer journey and mapping through. When we started this journey in Mamlaka, when we went looking for investors, the first time you say, I'm building a digital solution, somebody says, oh, I have built one, I have one in the shelf. And there are many people who have built solutions who they have not thought through. For example, when we want to order produce from a small scale, Africa is dotted with small scale farmers and small scale traders. The small scale trader takes a quarter of a sack of potatoes. A farmer cannot transport from the rural Kenya half a sack of potatoes all the way to Nairobi to one customer. The cost doesn't make sense. So at times, some of the technologies that we have are picked off the shelf as opposed to those which are developed. And those which will be developed, especially through collaboration, because there are many niche solutions. There are people who've worked with inputs in a specific field. There are people who've digitized certain value chains, collaboration. And that's why I have, without shame, believe that even for Africa, the blockchain will enable us to reduce the frictions that we have, be it infrastructural, be it this, because then we build on top of what somebody else has built.
Well, okay, but I'm really interested. Okay. We can come back to that. I mean, the point I'm sort of driving
for the smallholder farmers,
yeah,
because of non-scoping, because of poor scoping, M-Pesa succeeded because we understood how money is transferred from one micro person to the other.
Okay.
This is the key lesson that needs to be applied to all the others. How does the micro farmer work, and how does this solution? How do we? The job is on Robert, myself, yourself, and others to then demystify this solution to make it easy for them to use it. Otherwise, if we make it off the shelf, it becomes very difficult because you don't understand. I always believe that in the tech development, there is a big role for sociologists and psychologists who understand how these people behave, what is their day-to-day, and without involving those people, then prepare tech solutions, which are very technical and cannot be adopted by the small users.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've just lost my screen. Another technology problem here.
We can see you and hear you.
Not just Africa loses power, but that's classic example of trying to do business in Africa. Really, I mean, this is not an unusual situation. Thank you, Kip. Let me direct one to Roland. It's sort of along the same lines. You know, I don't know if this is too much of a stretch, but private sector technology innovators, you know, again, they're delivering to other large players. It's very difficult for them to profitably deliver at the smallholder level. And in a perverse sense, the fact that some of the new technologies are going to the larger players and not the small players poses a risk that the digital divide will become even worse as the new players adopt the technology and the small players don't. You know, there's a risk of widening that digital gender divide too, because women are face the most challenges. So how can we get these private sector driven innovations shared more equitably? And you know, we have to pay attention to the smallholder voice, the women and youth voice, the vulnerable populations that are involved along the value chain. So, you know, you've got China buying into Africa, you got all these countries buying up land and going to do wonderful things with it. But how do we be sure that we get this down to the smallholder level and to make sure that, you know, the enabling environment is not only conducive, but inclusive? Do you have any views on that, Roland?
Yes, Adam. I think these are one of the principal aspects that I'm actually working on, because when we started, we understood that problem. You see, and I'll talk for a classical case like Cameroon. Cameroon's population is largely agricultural, but those who involved in the agricultural activities, mostly, you know, from the villages, in most cases, sometimes illiterate, and in most other cases, their economic situations are so hard that, you know, they cannot even get to the basic threshold to be able to access some of these interventions that institutions can actually introduce to them. So it's a huge problem. In many ways, you know, the government have tried to create some sort of cooperatives wherein these farmers could come under, and then for them to be able to gain access to some of these resources. But again, that was still a big problem, because most of these farmers have no access to the information that is actually out there. They realized that at some point, you know, most of the cooperatives were not even made of farmers, were just made of people who wanted to just formalize themselves, be able to gain access to some of these resources that were out there. I think that the solution to be able to onboard small scale holders has to start with working with the private sector, not really with the government sector. And I'll say this with all confidence, because the government has been in the business of trying to engage smallholder farmers forever. There are all sorts of funding that has come through for that to happen. But even to today, it is still very tricky, to the point where these smallholder farmers have actually lost hope, they lost the trust, and don't believe in those interventions anymore. Many others who come to the smallholder farmers with the point that, oh, we're coming to help, we're coming to assist, they're more or less coming to take advantage of their poverty status and these images so that they can go on and get more funding and financing. I mean, the saddest thing is the fact that if you go now to the smallholder farmers and try to tell them that, hey, you belong to this organization and you're trying to work with them to get access to this information, they just believe that, well, everybody just comes, takes, you know, their data, takes photos, and go collect some money, which they never get back in return. So we need to get to the point where we start to identify, you know, the real actors and find ways that we can work with one person at a time or one small scale holder at a time. And you cannot do that, especially if you need large investments to be able to carry on with. which is why we believe that with what we're doing with greenhouses, it's very, very instrumental, because once you get one greenhouse in a particular family, you get that entire family working with that particular greenhouse. The idea is that, well, everything they cultivate, everything that they harvest, we buy everything or provide a market for that, enables them to get more money to be able to set up other greenhouses, and that chain can actually spiral out. And that's the best way that we believe that that solution could be tackled. And unless we begin to find ways that we regain their confidence and regain their trust, we will never get anywhere close to being able to understand the real problem. Many a times we believe that we know the problem, but what we believe as what we know, especially the educative problem, is not really what the real problem is. Getting on the ground, talking to them, understanding them, but making them understand that you have the real solutions for the real problems is what we really need to start doing. Here at Greenhouse Ventures, we did not only come in with greenhouses, we also came in with the aspect of training. We came in with the aspect of the market, and we do not only train them in cultivation, we also train them how to sell. You can either sell to us or you can sell to anyone where you do have a market. And we made it in such a way that we are able to develop or create markets around particular farms. So if we have a farm in a location, say in Yaoundé, and we have a good cluster of farms, what we do is that we create markets around those particular farms. And it makes them actually see where their produce is going and actually see the money from their produce. Many a times, the smallholder farmers don't see where the money is coming from. You know, they produce today, they sell tomorrow, but they have no idea about how much it was being sold. So to a point where they are never able to standardize their cultivation, are never able to valorize it. So for us, is being able to engage, you know, these smallholder farmers in the entire value chain of their produce, making them understand that, okay, the cost of production is this, the value of the sale is this, and this is what they're making. And that's what we at Greenhouse Ventures, we've been able to do, because not only do we have greenhouses, but we also have a market platform where we engage all of them on, and they actually see the value of their production. And when there are any changes in terms of what to produce, the value, the quality, they are all informed. And today we are happy that we've gotten many, many people involved in a technology that people believe that it was, you know, quote unquote, the white man's technology. They are now believing themselves with that, and they're making a lot of gains, which we believe that down the road, we could be able to engage many more people and see how the technology could be valorized to many other nations entirely.
I hope so, Roland. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We have run out of time, and you know, 1 hour to speak to 3 highly esteemed and successful practitioners and cover African agriculture is just not enough. But I really hope that after today, those listening have a clearer picture of what it means, of what an inclusive, digitally enabled agricultural transformation, how it could help Africa, how it could help not only the big players, but the smallholder players and the service providers along the value chain. You know, there's a couple of big issues we did not go into today. Obviously, we did not talk really much about access to finance. And while M-Pesa is a great thing, you know, in my experience, access to finance, be it government intervention funds or anything like that, it doesn't work as planned, let's say. And the institutions that are managing these funds clearly are not oriented to the higher risk smallholder farmer. There's a lot of pressure. So we did not talk about the C word. The C word is, C stands for corruption. There's a lot of that going around the world today. That's not specific to Africa by any means. But there needs to be these such technologies like blockchain, where you can hopefully have a transparent yet secure platform for exchanging information and goods and money. There's a lot of things, and hopefully the next that we will carry on from this, if there's interest. In our next webinar, we'll carry on with another aspect of sustainable agriculture in Africa. It's the largest employment sector across the continent by far. It affects every family to some extent or the other. And I just apologize that I can't address the questions that are still coming in at this late time. I really need to close. I would like to expressly thank our speakers primarily who donated their time and prepared for this meeting. They are all going to be players to watch, whether it's Mamlaka Foods, whether it's Greenhouse Ventures in Cameroon, Mamlaka Foods in Kenya, and Busis, based in Ghana, covering global SaaS applications and services. Thank you very much. I would like to also thank the Global Policy Institute, in particular the president, Paolo van Schirach, who is not only a good friend, but has really pushed the Institute into moving in these directions that are so meaningful to us. And Denise Caritas, who is the executive director who put this all together. And I know without her, I wouldn't be here because I kept losing everything and kept misplacing people's emails and what have you. And she's always been there for us. So thank you, Denise. Look forward to working with you again. And lastly, the participants, your interest and commitment to one of the most urgent and enormous challenges of our day, food and nutritional security, incomes, rural livelihoods. Please do stay tuned for future webinars coming from the Global Policy Institute and Bay Atlantic University, a very incredible, fairly new university that is becoming quite a powerhouse in Washington, D.C. If you're interested in that space or have yourself or friends looking for both undergraduate and graduate education that's affordable and applicable, I urge you to look up Bay Atlantic University. So again, thank you all for coming, and I wish you a great week and a wonderful, happy, and healthy holiday season. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kip. Robert.
Thank
Roland,
you very much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Denise.
Adam.
I think the recording has ended. There's many good points and other questions that have come in. I just couldn't get to them, but I'm sure we will all be talking again very soon. So take care. And again, thanks. We'll be in touch.
Thank
Hey,
you very much.
Okay, Adam.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
One more
Yeah.
thing.
Kip, can I get contacts of Kip and Robert? Just like to stay in touch with you guys. Love what you guys are doing.
I'll
Thank
send
you
an
very much.
email.
We will share that.
I'll send an email with everybody's email on it. And for
All
those
righty.
and for those, if you want to look at this session again, this was recorded. So if you have people that say, sorry, I missed it, I couldn't make it, they can go onto the Global Policy Institute website and watch a recording if interested.
Okay. If you
Yeah.
find this, you can forward to all
Thank
of us
you.
an email. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you very much, Adam. Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Thank you, guys.